thanks for joining us, guys. Just for people who are listening, Brian and I met last year from the Velocity conference. We wanted to figure out a way to fit a time for him to have some time to chat with everybody and share his knowledge. And then once we did, also suggested looping in Mr. Jordan from Satellite. So I think this is our first one with two people from two different companies at the same time. So yeah, it'll be like a little round table vibe. But no, I'm pumped to chat. I think, like I said this before, I'm super interested in just learning more about the sales and ops planning side of things, because I think traditionally it's more common knowledge to be familiar with the marketing of a CPG brand, maybe even the production type of things, but not a lot of folks know what it takes to kind of go from getting the ingredients all the way through to on shelf. And then once it's on shelf, what it takes to actually sell through the product. I think just general consumers assume it just appears at their local Ralph's, and they have no idea the logistics and planning that need to go into place for it to get there. So I always have an appreciation for these types of conversations. But no, pumped to chat. I think just to kick us off, Ryan, if you want to start, just give a little bit of background and kind of how you got where you are today. And then Jordan will do the same. And then obviously we can dive into a little bit more after that.
Yeah, sounds great, Dylan. And again, thanks for having us. So essentially, I've spent my entire career in CPG in sales and operations. So essentially being that focal point between the sales side of the business and the operations side of the business. So I like to, I like to say that's one of the most diplomatic roles in a CPG organization is the demand planner that basically takes all the inputs and turns it into a plan that can then be produced against. So I got my start at a large CPG called Unilever, working in their ice cream division for all of the US. And anyone that actually knows me as a person knows that all right, well, that's the perfect job for Ryan. Yeah, of course he's selling popsicles. And so, even though, you were doing stuff with SpongeBob pop-ups and all these different, crazy form factors and things of that nature, it was a huge business and came with a lot of complexity, a lot of seasonality, a lot of price promotion, a lot of competition, et cetera. So I learned a ton right out of the gate. And so, at Unilever, I got the chance to demand plan, Ben and Jerry's. I spent a year out in the actual ice cream factory learning about literally how to make the product and what can go wrong will in a supply chain. Never ceases to amaze me. And then after some years there, I got the opportunity to jump to a startup, which was Icelandic Provisions. And Icelandic Provisions, I was the 5th employee there, but it became the fastest growing brand in dairy yogurt. And scaling that brand over the next 5.5 years was amazing. Throughout that time, I learned that the way that you plan a large business like Unilever, right, using statistical forecasting, things of that nature, just would not scale or just would not work for a brand whose history is changing month over month. You're running new promotions, you're getting new distribution. Everything has to be informed with the latest data from sales, right? And from the people that know what's happening in the market. And so looking for solutions out there to say, hey, how can we structure this data that isn't in a fragile Excel file? How do we get all of this together and everyone on the same page? I couldn't find anything. No one that we reached out to had any ideas for any application. And so that's when I called up my co-founder and CTO and said, hey, man, there's something here. And I think we can help a lot of brands plan and execute their businesses a lot more efficiently. And so that's brings us to the day, pardon me, brings us to the day. And we're supporting over 30 brands, some of the highest growing, fastest growing brands in the country, which is excellent, huge milestone. And our goal is just to keep learning and developing the system. So that's a bit about me. And yeah, Jordan, feel free.
Awesome. Yeah, Dylan, thanks for having me. Brian, thank you for you and the team for inviting me to join this conversation. Similar to you, Ryan, I spent about a decade in CPG. I spent all of my time at a company called Eat Just. I was very early on at the company, started out doing demos at Whole Foods and Costco, and soon moved into really being a leader in the sales and marketing side of things. And I think like most folks who are coming into CPG, I was surprised, shocked, and frustrated just by how clunky this industry is when it comes to sales. Every brand product that you see on the shelf today, whether it's at Whole Foods, Safeway, or Costco, got there by a piece of paper or a PDF or a spreadsheet. And I don't have to tell you that does little storytelling. It goes out of date the second that you send it. And I saw firsthand the massive cluster and frustration that that one piece of paper causes throughout the entire organization. Everyone from operations who's helping to source all of the specifications, everyone in sales op who's helping with everything in between there, to marketing, to sales, all of these inputs are going into this sales tool. And if you're in this game, you know that things change daily. So as soon as you send out that PDF or print off that sell sheet, it's old and it's outdated and it's likely going to frustrate a buyer. So at my time at eJust, I built what we would think of it as an MVP of Satellite. It was a website, one resource that I sent to our entire broker organization, distributors, and internal sales team, helping streamline how they sold our products. And I found out firsthand through training them all across the country that if you make selling your product easier, if you made it ensured accuracy, amazing things can happen. And with this tool that I helped build at eJust, we went on to lead the category, to be a wildly fast-growing brand across retail and food service. And similar to you, Ryan, was like, you know what? This works. There's a frustration and a problem here. What if we build a platform to service the rest of the industry to help them do something similar? So it brought us to really starting Satellite, to challenge the status quo of how brands are launching and selling their products. The tool that we're most known for is what we call a dynamic sell sheet. We took that idea of a PDF, of a spreadsheet that's being printed and sent over email, and said, why not make it digital? Why not make it dynamic? Something that can play video to tell your story, something that can feature distributor codes and DC availability and promotions, and enable folks to take action by requesting samples and collect information that's actually needed to drive sales. So we've been pushing hard. That's our core product that we're known best for, but we've got a lot more that we're offering brands. Today, we have about 300 on the platform today, ranging everywhere from emerging brands to international. We also do a lot of partnerships with brokers throughout the industry. One couple call outs is Green Spoon Sales. They've adopted Satellite as one of their core selling tools in their toolkit, along with some amazing other brokers like Rooted Food Sales, Space Station CPG, are really helping us usher in this new era of selling and helping brands across the industry. So we're having fun.
Nice. Yeah, a lot there. Well, first, congrats, guys. Again, thanks for joining. And you guys both have similar backgrounds in the sense that I would love to dive in a little bit more on. Ryan, like for you, your time at Unilever versus Icelandic, and then Jordan, I mean, being at Just for what, 10 years?
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys saw a lot of early stage CPG problems and a lot of large CPG problems, like as you continued to scale. So just kind of curious, like Ryan, from a planning perspective, and Jordan, maybe on like the sales process side, what are some like early stage problems that you saw as the brands were scaling, and solutions that maybe you implemented to solve those problems? And just like some key maybe pitfalls that brands can avoid as they're going through that stage of, you know, hey, we're expanding outside of our backyard, you know, we're going from San Diego to nationwide in Kroger, or, you know, something of that nature. Like what are some things that you guys ran into that maybe other brands will experience and could avoid moving forward?
Dude, so listing off pitfalls when scaling, how much time you got? There's definitely, it's a minefield out there, but just to kind of go through some of the similarities and differences between a large, you know, multinational and a startup. What's interesting is, the multinational has massive sales teams, right? People at headquarters, right? So coordinating all of those inputs is very difficult, and then putting them up against like the statistical, algorithm that's driving the demand plan is always a challenge. That said, when I went over to Icelandic Provisions, I thought, of course, it'd be a heck of a lot easier dealing with, 2 or 3 salespeople and making sure all those inputs are in. However, they're always on the road, right? They are always selling. There's always a new meeting to go to, and they are spread very, very thin. And so I feel like, getting the sales inputs in, and of course the Icelandic Provisions team, it does a tremendous job, because the key thing to really make sure is communicated is that if you plan, you can make sure it's actualized. So just to kind of give the folks here a better sense of modus planning, essentially, right, it's all about planning the volume at each retailer, but through the underlying distribution network that supports that retailer. And so why that is so important is that we can plan, let's say, a price reduction or a buy one, get one deal, and see the impact at the retailer, but through, okay, how much does the distributor have to order to make sure that's on shelf in the correct quantities? And so to your point, Dylan, about major pitfalls, number one is when you're a new brand, distributors have no history on how they should order your products. And that is a huge issue. If you just ship what they order and don't question it, you truly run the risk of going out of stock, especially during promotion periods, and not even getting off the ground after resets. So you really have to forward manage and not just assume that a downstream supply chain partner is going to just do exactly the correct thing for your brand. So I would say forward management is a key piece. And that's really why, we built Modus Planning, right? It's to give line of sight into those situations where, a salesperson's done all this work selling in new products with this plan to support the brand on the shelf. And now we can turn that plan into a reality using Modus Planning to make sure that those orders are in line and that the demand plan is actually going to happen. So from my perspective, that's the key pitfall, is just making sure that we get all the information centralized and that that's communicated over cross-functionally, so no one's missing anything. And one last pitfall, I would say, if you're growing a brand, starting out with a solid infrastructure in technology will save you so much heartache. I was spoiled coming into Icelandic Provisions with an ERP system already built out. I've seen brand after brand, some upwards of 50, 60, 70 million dollars, still tracking orders in a spreadsheet. And that is so difficult to scale because you start missing things and you cannot analyze it. So I would say, really make sure that your accounting, your order management systems are really solid. And of course, make sure your planning systems are solid as well. That goes without saying. So any other points, Jordan, any other pitfalls you've seen?
Yeah, Ryan, what I love talking to you, man. It's like a Satellite, and what we do sets it up, right? We're helping folks collect all this data, these inputs to make this sale. Then we essentially are going to pass it to you and your tools to make sure it ships and it happens. But a couple of pitfalls that I've seen in my time with eJust and other CPG brands across the board is this idea of time, right? You only have, it's not an infinite amount, especially if you're on the sales side. What you're spending your time and your team's time doing couldn't be more critical, especially in today's environment, right? Every minute, every second counts. And I'm shocked, I still am, by the amount of time sales folks spend searching for the right piece of information and content to make a sale. Whether that be a UPC code, or that be a case pack configuration, a tie high, whatever it may be, from the time a customer asks that question to when that piece of information is delivered is usually hours. And it's not just the person who's delivering or responding to that email. Now they're pinging multiple people in the organization, making sure that they have the most accurate piece of content. There is a wild amount of wasted work that is happening that is underneath the surface. You don't see it like when you first step into a headquarters. You don't notice it because most people are too proud to admit it. They think that they got their shit handled and they're organized. And the reality is that most don't. They don't know where to go. So centralizing all of this information, whether it be the technical data like specifications and codes, whether it be the latest price list that you're sending to a customer, centralizing it, having clear ownership and utilizing it on a day-to-day basis has been a massive thing that we talk to brands a lot about. And it's a pitfall just because it goes unnoticed. Other thing I would say is kind of on the other end of that is, as you're scaling, you're building out your sales team internally, you're also building out your sales team externally, right? A founder at an emerging company takes pride in being in every meeting. They take pride in looking that buyer in the eye and telling them their story. But the hard truth is that as you scale and as you build distribution, you as a founder are not going to be in that room. Can't happen. You can't tell your story the way that you want to tell it. So how do you empower not just internal folks who sit next to you, but brokers and distributors who you may never meet, who may never learn about your story? How do you empower them and enable them to do it in the most authentic way possible? So they're not just dropping a price list on a buyer's desk and saying, here's a product, I know nothing about it, just look at the price list and tell me yes or no. How do you ensure that they can communicate your story? Because that's how, especially an emerging brand, that's what you need to win. You have to have it.
100%.
Yeah, you touch on a really interesting topic there, and that's kind of just how competitive it is in CPG in general. I mean, there's so much variance on the shelf in terms of products, and I don't know if you've ever been to like an Erewhon, for example, but looking at the refrigerated section, it's like a rainbow. It's hard to really understand what's going on. And so I think you're just spot on in terms of like brands need to do things that, one, scale, but two, stand out. In today's day and age, I think everybody's fighting for eyeballs, whether that's for consumers or for, buyers at retailers. And so that's why I think what you guys do makes so much sense. It's just like traditionally so antiquated. But you both also kind of mentioned this, and that's the fragmentation, I think, that happens, one, in the industry, but two, in like the pass through of data within a company. And so I guess, like, what are some examples maybe as you were scaling where that fragmentation kind of hurt the company in achieving goals? And then, at what stage did you realize, like, okay, we need to start investing in either tools or strategies or methods that simplify the pass through of information and make like the connectivity within the company a lot seamless? And then what effect did that have on the business moving forward?
Yeah, Ryan, I can go first here. I alluded to this when I gave my intro, but at each as we were scaling, we were hiring internal and we were hiring brokers. And with that comes distributors and hundreds of people selling our product, Just Egg. And I remember being on multiple emails, more than I could count, being CC'd and seeing what that salesperson has attached to that email that they sent the buyer. And 9 times out of 10, that content was wrong. It was old. It was out of date. They were using what was saved on their desktop. And I was wildly frustrated by it, rightfully so, right? Like, how is this happening? How do you not care? This is a buyer's first introduction to our brand, and it's wrong. It's a bad look all the way around. And then I started to think about it. Well, these people are busy as hell. They got a million things going on. They got folks calling them. They got other brands talking to them. We need to make it easier, or another way to look at it, harder to fuck it up. Like, what if it was impossible to get it wrong? And that's when internally we built this mini site that we called Sell Just Egg, and we sent it to everyone. We said, if you are selling our products, don't send me an email. Don't look in your SharePoint. Don't look in your Dropbox. Go to this one spot, and everything that you need is right here, beautifully laid out and accessible. And we saw, going to my former point of wasted work, the amount of wasted work reduced because everyone knew where to grab it. And then we saw the authentic storytelling go up, whether it's email or in person. And then I stopped seeing these, outdated presentations, sell sheets, price lists being attached, just by removing the possibility for someone to get it wrong. Stop blaming them and just thinking more upstream of, let's just get ahead of the problem before it even gets created. I think we talk about upstream a lot, and I think, Ryan, what you guys are doing is like the upstream way of demand planning, right?
Oh.
It's so similar in that way.
Oh yeah, and like the similarities, like Jordan, like when you and I first connected, the similarities in terms of, hey, don't go anywhere else, don't email, don't Slack, it's in Satellite or it's in Modus, right? The similarities there are huge, because right, single source of truth for all of your selling data, and we're the single source of truth for all of the planning data, executional aspects of it. So yeah, I think this the synergies there and the similarities are awesome. But yeah, Dylan, to answer your question, where I've seen things go wrong or off the rails, I gotta bring up trade promotion management. And so you have a whole category, and for those on the webinar who aren't familiar with trade promotion management, essentially every tag you see, advertising a product or at a lower price on the shelf at Ralph's or Safeway or whatever it may be, the brand is paying for that. And oftentimes that is the second largest spend bucket that the brand has to contend with behind their actual cost of goods sold. So you're talking, 20, 30% of a brand's gross revenue in this trade promotion spend. And I've seen it managed so many different ways, right? Where people are like, all right, well, we did about 22% last year. Let's just do that this year and bucket it into a, just giant trade, blob, right? Like structuring it where you can actually track it and understand, okay, I'm spending all this money. Is it actually resulting in positive sales for me? Like, or am I spending this money? Do I even know I'm spending this money? I mean, I've heard stories I've actually seen where you don't plan the spend, and then the broker applies a Publix BOGO, right, and you get the bill back, but no one forecasted that $100,000 spend, and then all of a sudden all of the economics are up in the air, right? And so being able to structure trade promotion data is, I think, an imperative for any brand who really is competing at retail. Where Modus really differs with other what are called TPMs or trade promotion management systems is that we do all the core TPM activities, but we tie that to the operations side of the business, right? And so the whole goal for me, right, and this whole concept of creating an operating system for your brand is that once a salesperson uses Satellite to just knock the socks off of a buyer, and they're like, yes, we're going to bring in 5 SKUs and 1,400 doors in March, that gets plugged right into Modus. You can see the impact on your gross sales, net sales, and then of course, when you come up towards March, make sure that the distributors are ordering for that reset, because the last thing you want to do is go out of stock when you've promised amazing service with this amazing sell sheet from Satellite, right? And so that's really where we come in, and of course, right, if consumers are on Vizer and they've got the the coupons and all of that, right? We want to make sure that the products are on shelf, for that consumer, and they're just delighted every time.
I love what both you guys are doing, and we talked about this before, of this idea of, we're 2024, right? The entire experience, everywhere from the sell-in to the planning to consumer trade needs a refresh, right? Needs some innovation, needs a relook. And I love that what you both are doing in their spaces. It's challenging the status quo, building products, because what's being done today was built decades ago, and doesn't make any sense, and is inefficient and inaccurate, and needs your platform. So I love it.
Yeah, what I love about what you guys do is, one, you kind of interface with each other at different stages and places in the company. And so I have 2 routes we can go. Brian, I guess I'll kind of direct this one to you, and then Jordan, it'll probably segue into how it affects your team. But I guess like one, at what stage does demand planning become important for a brand? Like I know obviously I'm sure your answer is going to be the very beginning. But just like when does it actually start to affect kind of out of stocks, promotions, financial plans, and I think like what's again super interesting about what you guys do is it lets the brand kind of control their own destiny at the end of the day, which I think is important, and giving them the confidence to refer to data, knowing that like this is the right decision, either to go into a retailer or to actually hold off on launching into that retailer, assuming say they have to do free fills for a nationwide launch, like that's a pretty large cash outlay that maybe they're not taking into account. So Ryan, I guess like at what stage should a brand start to seriously consider implementing like a formal demand planning service? And then Jordan, I guess that will probably segue into you on like when should we start to consider potentially like scaling up and formalizing our sales plan moving forward?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And so I think it also depends on the category and the structure of the team. I would say that has a lot to do with it. I remember with the team at Islamic Provisions, I mean, we had an ERP and I could have used Modus from day one, right? Because I needed to make sure I planned my sales with a significantly, with a high precision, right? Given it's perishable dairy, which is fun. But the for many brands, right, if you have a team, right, if you're launching into Whole Foods, into Sprouts, and you want to be competitive, we've had brands on Modus that are industry experts, but they're still pre-revenue. But in order to plan and execute, right, they bring us on board. And so it really does depend on, is the team trying to grow as profitably as possible? Are they trying to understand their demand from the jump? Are they trying to understand their promotional efficiency significantly better, right? And if the answer to those questions is yes, then we are definitely we would love to help out. However, we've worked with teams pre-revenue. We've worked with teams who are 100 million plus, and so there's a lot of flexibility there. And we love what we do, right? And so my team and I love working with brands and finding, okay, where are those opportunities? Because every brand's got them.
I think on the emerging side, like listen, or even early on, you can spend your time as a founder or sales leader at that company. You're probably the only one in terms of sales. You can spend your time with customers, driving relationships, and what really matters with customers, or you could spend your time in like the back and forth of sales content and sales sheets and presentations and sending and redistributing. Talk to any founder, any sales leader, they're spending hours doing that. So even if you're very early on, maybe you got a couple products and you're just building distribution, your time is more important than ever, and you should be spending it with customers. Secondly, if you're early on, you got to show up in a way that's real and authentic, like we talked about earlier. That's where our dynamic sales sheets come into play. But I'd say we're seeing a ton of energy is around larger brands who have 20, 30, 50 brands in their portfolio, teams domestically, internationally, broker networks that range from 6 to 10, thousands of individuals who are selling their products, and they're managing all of the information and content they need to win in a spider web of services, platforms, email, printed off handouts. So whether you're just starting out or you're international and you have all the resources in the world, folks are seeing value in Satellite to get efficient, to streamline, and to show up in a beautiful, compelling way.
And I think maybe putting your CPG hats on from your time there, how should brands think about technology and implementing it kind of into their day-to-day flow? I think like I'm like obsessed with the CPG industry. Like I just love the people in general, but I think everybody's kind of on the same page that as it relates to like tech progression, it's, maybe a little bit farther behind than a lot of other industries. And so like, what were some like manual problems that maybe you guys ran into that maybe you wish you had a solution for, and that's kind of what led you to building what you are now? But I guess just in general, like how should brands think about technology and implementing it into their company, whether it's through marketing tactics, obviously demand planning and sales tactics. Not sure if you guys have any like strong flashbacks from when you were back at the brands or anything like that, but it would be interesting to hear.
I mean, from my perspective, it's table stakes, right? Like that is embracing technology is, if you want to be competitive, is absolutely key. Because like to Jordan's point, right, about the whole spider web, right? I've seen just constellations of spreadsheets that brands are using to plan their business. Version control is an absolute nightmare. So you're starting to talk about a budget that, you know, your CEO is seeing different numbers. You never want that, right? And so embracing technology to really structure the go to market, right? To say, hey, this is the standard, right? This is how brands plan to go to market versus you know, all of these different spreadsheets that are all in different formats. They kind of all do the same thing, but yeah, everyone coming into the business has to learn a new format, really embracing a standard, right? Getting in front of that, not only with planning, right? And, you know, with Modus and all of that, right? But also with your internal systems, ERPs, et cetera, really embracing that and saying, hey, look, this is what's going to set us up for long-term success so that we don't miss a beat, so that Modus can go through and read my actuals and tell me, hey, what are your new baselines? How did this promotion perform? Like to Jordan's point, right? Your most valuable resource, especially starting out, is your time. And so technology can be a force multiplier in your go-to-market. And so that's yeah, that's my advice. I mean, I'm all in. Yeah.
Let's be like honest too, especially in today's world of CPG. There ain't any like hiring sprees going on, right? Like budgets are tight, teams are lean. So there's never been a more critical time for brands to leverage technologies to scale. You have to. You can't hire a team to, you know, do demand planning and maybe as easy as you could a decade ago. You can't hire a team to own all of your sales operations and content. You got to be lean and smart about it, and tech and software is the way to do it. So critical, especially in today's world.
A couple questions. You know, a lot of CPG brands being startups, I think in the last 5 years, it's just completely exploded in terms of the number of companies that have come into the market. But is there such thing as too many tech platforms or too many tools to use available? A lot of these companies are 10 employees or less, early stage, tight budgets. How can a brand like evaluate, I guess, like efficacy of a tool when deciding? And two, I'm going to tee it up for you guys here. There's so much fragmentation in vendors. Like a brand has to go to one person to get one thing done. And then conceptually that vendor should be able to do kind of the next best thing when in reality it doesn't. I always come back to like going to a clearinghouse to make the barcode, going someone else to print the coupon, going to someone else to mail the coupon. Like that whole process I think is ridiculous. So like how can brands, I guess, evaluate these opportunities when they're early stage, and what should they look for when picking kind of partners to onboard?
Listen, you can definitely have too many tech platforms. That's a short answer. Of course you can, but I would, if I were a CPG brand today, be in talking to a lot of platforms like Modus and ourselves. What does the world look like without that platform? So I mean, in terms of satellite, I'll use an example. As you're evaluating the price, the time that goes into set it up, all that good stuff, what does it look like without? So in a world with and without satellite, what efficiencies, what connections, what stories are you telling or not telling with or without? And I'd make those evaluations based off of a world with and without that tool. But I'd look for platforms who want to grow with you, who are interested in investing in you. We are a small industry. And especially if you're able to get connected with a platform like any of ours who want to invest in our brands, who want to grow with them. We're not stuck in our ways and our paths of doing things. We want to build, we want to disrupt, and there's no better opportunity than to do it together with brands. I look for opportunities like that.
Jordan, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, we're very aligned philosophically with working with just stellar partners who make us better, right? As much as they learn from us, we want to learn from them. So that's awesome. But yeah, Jesse, you bring up a good point, right? With people who are with small budgets, small teams, how did you make this worth it? I would go back to time savings, making sure that you get it right the first time, because in a world without Modus, right, where you just ship the product to the distributor and you have no idea that you're going out of stock, or you have no idea about which which promotions are running at a given point in time, and then until you get the deduction on your check, that world is a heck of a lot more difficult than a world where you can actually forward manage and anticipate and make sure those issues don't even happen, because you don't have the capital nor the time to have those issues occur. But of course, right, if the tech enables the people, so for example, with Modus, right, we launched a recommendations engine that you can feed in syndicated data, and it basically does all of the demand planning work and says, hey, here's our recommendations. Use your own judgment to approve or reject them based on what going on the shelf, right? So from there, it's like it's a force multiplier for those small teams. And of course, from a pricing perspective, I know Jordan and I both sort of grew up in small CPG, and how I create pricing really does try to reflect, how can I be very empathetic towards where brands are, especially the startups and those brands that are really finding their legs.
We can do a quick last minute question and then we'll wrap up. Super curious just to hear from you guys, and Jordan, I know you've been kind of working on this at Satellite as well, is how can brands kind of leverage either of your technologies or just technology in general? Feel free to take it however you will, but to continue to just kind of gather information and build that relationship with their consumer. I think there's a lot of kind of walls that vendors will put up, not allowing brands to connect with their consumer, however they do it. And so just kind of curious on what you guys are doing and what you're seeing in the market to help brands further those relationships with the people who either do buy their product or may be interested in buying their product.
Yeah. So no, I think we're starting to see a number of clients really doubling down into shopper marketing tactics, and I think Vizer is definitely among them in terms of how brands can connect with their ideal persona, right, with health focused individuals. And so I'm definitely seeing more innovation in terms of shopper marketing tactics to really cut through the noise, right, to give people an incentive to seek out your product, which is really awesome. But also the other thing is connecting through price. It is a reality that 55% of trade managers last year said that they were actually increasing their trade budgets. So cutting through the noise and competing on the shelf, right? You have to make sure you're always there. You have to make sure that the promotions that you do run are efficient, so that when you do engage with the consumers, right, through Vizer, through other channels, the product's on the shelf at the price point that they're delighted with. So that's what I'm seeing on my end. But there's definitely no shortage in pricing actions here in the market.
I know, especially with inflation and all that stuff, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
But no, that's awesome, guys. Well, listen, we're kind of at time here. How can people get in touch with you guys too if they just have more questions and want to learn more and fire that off that your way?
Yeah, you can always reach out to me at jordan@satellitecpg.com. You can visit our website, satellitecpg.com. I'll say to anyone listening, we're running a big promotion, getting brands onto the platform to prepare for Expo West, to get you to go digital, get your sell sheets out of the garbage can, and enable buyers to actually take action, like telling you what products they're interested in, featuring promotions, and getting the most out of that show. So any folks who listen to this webinar, feel free to reach out to me. Let me know that you heard about Satellite, and we'll get you all hooked up for Expo and beyond.
Yeah, and you can reach out to me on modusplanning.com. We can book a demo directly with me. I would love the chance to look over any planning files you have or any questions on promotion planning, etc. I'd love to talk shop. Yeah, really looking forward to continuing to really try to become the standard for how brands plan and execute on their go-to-market. So yeah, really appreciate the time, Dylan.
Thank you, Dylan.
Yeah.
Go team. Good
Yeah.
job, everybody.
Thanks.
You guys killed it. Yes, Expo West, hit up Jordan because I think it's a no-brainer being able to like scan and people can sign up and get the sell sheet and the product. I think that is just like, it just makes, and it's so much cheaper than printing out all those damn pieces of paper. But anyways, okay, guys, thank you so much. This was great. Thank you to the people who tuned in. We recorded this, so we'll be posting it and emailing it, cutting up some clips as well. So you'll probably get an email with the recording. But until next time.